Welcome again. I'm still having camera problems, and with me today on the show is Alex Everts, candidate for City Council District 4. And welcome, Alex. I have to apologize because I've been trying to get Alex in here for like a week, and all of my stuff didn't shut down. It was operator error. I wish I could blame someone, because you know how I enjoy blaming other people for things that I do, but I can't blame anybody but myself. I
blame the technology. That's what I always do. I mean, at the end of the day, cameras and phones and everything else isn't my forte either.
Well, you and my son Shane have been very good friends for many, many years, and Shane has yelled at me about all of this and said that I had no business dealing with any of this stuff because I don't know how to use it. And then he said that I needed to do YouTube tutorials, and I said, I gave birth to you. I don't need YouTube tutorials. You just do it. You're my kid. Do it for me.
It's funny, he didn't just tell you to hire somebody.
Well, and I ended up hiring Royce Chamberlain, so I'm waiting for him to come here in a little while and fix everything. Okay. But anyway, we'll do it the old-fashioned way on the phone.
That's fine.
So it's good to have you, Alex. Tell me how you're enjoying the campaign trail, because everybody's been in here talking about their stories.
Oh man, I mean, it's been a lot of fun. I feel like we've had more events in this city election than we've had in any election. That's just a number of things. That's from just the excitement around having what we have in the mayoral race, and then, I mean, that speaks for itself. That gets a lot of attention by itself regardless. And then having an additional council seat above the normal. You know, usually you have 2 and then 3 every other set of years, so it's staggered off, but this time you have 4 out of 5 because Matt Wardell left. So that leads to us. So altogether you have over $470,000, I think is where we're at now, which, you know, no more contributions can be had for now, but it looks like we got 2 runoffs that are going to happen after this. So it's been an experience. We've had a lot more engagement than I've ever seen, and right, we always
that is true.
All of us like
that
to go to all these events, and we had more events in a 2-week period than any of us could keep up with. It's like we were about to just have to quit our jobs and close our businesses and hire maids because we didn't have anything. There's no way we could be in all these places at once. Some people couldn't even make it. They had to pick and choose where we were going. Some people
and then throw in those that got sick with COVID through it.
Yeah.
You know, I tell or I tease with all of y'all candidates about, you know, you've had about 8 weeks to run this race, and a lot of county races and of course other races we run for 18 months. And it's the same thing every night, every day, all day. You have someplace you got to be, and it's grueling. You know, it's really quite.
One thing I can say to that too is I think that part of the process for the city isn't really, you know, much of a hurdle, and that's what it takes to qualify, being only 25 signatures. I mean, everywhere else you got to do 1% of the electorate, and right here in the city of Ocala, anybody can just kind of take their hat in a day and go get their names thrown in the pot. It doesn't take much to do that. So,
is there a fee?
Yeah, it's some sort of minute fee, you know, 10 cents per.
Because in county races, and what he's talking about is it's 1% of the population that you have to get signature cards done, which roughly in a county school board, county commission race, you have to get around, I think it's 4,000 cards, 2,800. Yeah. Or $4,000, something along that line.
Yep, you can pay a qualifying fee that's something steep as could be, or you can just get the thousands.
And that's simply to get your name on the ballot, to basically either cover the cost of putting the name on the ballot, or basically having enough desire, people showing desire that they want your name on the ballot.
Correct.
So.
Correct.
That's the purpose behind signature cards. Yeah, for county races, it takes months to get that many.
Exactly. It takes a lot of footwork. It takes something that's worth looking at. Anybody else can just kind of pop up in the city of Ocala and make it happen. So, you know, I would like that changed if possible, but we'll see where that goes.
And that would be a good change. You're correct about that.
It's a Riffraff Wall.
Mm-hmm.
At that point.
Well, you're exactly right, and it does need to be a little tougher to run. Yep. And especially, you know, you're in your seat, especially, it was an open seat by Matt Wardell. You were one of the first ones to file, and then there ended up to be 6 of you.
Yep.
And I from a candidate standpoint, that is a little bit disheartening.
Yeah, it just splits up a lot. You know, people that you typically think you can depend on their support and the way you can expect everything to fall. I mean, we reassessed every time, right? It's like, okay, so what's this going to do to things? What's that going to do to things? And some of these things you didn't even anticipate at all, no matter how much you could speculate. And I've talked to so many people. I've talked to just about everybody that any of us regularly talk to about these local politics. And everybody kind of says their favorite first, and that's how you know who they're voting for or who they donate money to. And then after that, you just hear them shake their head and they say, But I'm not really sure because it's hard to say, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like sometimes, you know, you get the same people smiling on all of our faces. Of course, you got some people that have donated to all of us, and I can't blame them.
Mm-hmm.
If it was me in their shoes and you're looking at that much, hey, it's hard to tell somebody no. But at the end of the day, you got one vote.
Yep.
So, and some of them don't even have that. But
And your race has been pretty tough, having 6 people in it. I had Lori Gregory and her dad in here yesterday, and we had the same discussion. She was treated very poorly in the beginning because people had already kind of made up their mind on one person, and all the money, people kind of threw their money at that one person and left the rest of you guys out there to flounder without even giving any of y'all a chance to be interviewed.
well, and it's one of those things too that, you know, the amount of money it's being grabbed at to be spent in this city election is overboard. It's over the top. You have a point of diminishing returns. You could come in here and spend $250 million. That doesn't mean that you're going to force even twice the turnout.
Mm-hmm.
You can only spend money to buy so many votes.
Yeah.
You can only get so much visibility out there. And like you said, people make up their mind. It is what it is. Right now, the sort of money that we've seen in some of these districts is head and shoulders above what we've seen in the past.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what used to be ceilings are floors now, and I don't see it as
And
viable
I
spending.
continue to ask the question as to why, and I've been doing this much
Right.
longer than you have, and I've never seen it where the influential money businessmen have teamed together
Right.
in almost with a vengeance to get their candidates elected. And, you know, we spoke briefly yesterday about the good old boy system,
Right.
and, you know, some people are for it, some people are not for it, obviously, but it's gotten a little bit out of hand where they're trying to dominate and manipulate elections, and it shouldn't be like that.
Well, and a lot of it comes down to, you know, that's what happens in politics. Everybody knows that. But we're becoming more robust a community. People are seeing more economically at stake, and they can try to take their claim in it one way or another. So they're just doing what they believe in. They're doing it to the best of their ability. If they can spend $1,000 on an election from their business, their person, every other business they have filed, that's what they're going to do. And, you know, it's more of the same, but it's just being magnified. It's being amplified. It's a strong economy.
Well,
We're growing.
and the unfortunate part, and I've said this to a lot of the union presidents who are new to politics, that you need to wait till qualifying is done. You need to wait till proper interviews are done. You can't necessarily judge a candidate from a forum. You have to sit down with them, and you have to have multiple people sit down with them, and then come back to the table and kind of compare notes. And that's how you kind of separate the men from the boys. I hate to use that term, but it is, and that's the way we've been doing it for a long time, the people that I deal with. So it wasn't, and I say that because it wasn't fair
Right.
to a lot of y'all. You
Right.
did not get a fair shake to, you know, show who you are.
Right.
And that's part of why I ended up starting to bring candidates in here, because I just wanted it to be more of a conversation than a forum where I could ask you a long run-on question and you're going to give me the answer to the best of your ability.
Yeah.
And it might sound good and it might not, and you may know and you may not know, but you're trying your best to answer it, which is admirable. Not necessarily the best thing, because they're trick questions and
Yeah.
you're not the incumbent, so chances are for you to really know the answer is very difficult.
When it comes to specific policy, that's always going to be the case, right? An incumbent's going to trounce anybody else. I've had situations where we were at forums and people were scared to ask questions, so I asked questions of other districts just to get the ball rolling. And, you know, what do you think happens every time? I'm asking something that's kind of a loaded question on my part because I happen to know about it. But look, everybody's got, you know, the pedestal they sit on. Some people know about things more than other people. You know, even with our current council, it's like that. You got people with fiscal backgrounds. Jay Mosley, who knows a lot about finance, so he probably has a lot in tune with the budget stuff. Ira Bethea comes from Parks and Rec, so he's got that sort of background, and that's fine. But that's why you have a council of 5, so that you get that, you know, varied experience. End of the day, kind of like you're saying, police ask police-related questions. You know, the CEP is going to ask questions about business. Certain people are going to have more to say about it than others, and some people are just not going to know in some cases, and that's fine. It's okay not to know. You're never going to know about all.
But it
all
doesn't give you a
departments.
diverse cross-reference about
Right.
what you, Alex Everts, or any other candidate actually has, you
Right.
know, is aware of. And I made that kind of point with Barry Mansfield, who sat here and talked so much about the Ocala Airport, which is really has not come up at the campaign trail at all.
But that's his thing.
But
right?
that's his thing,
he's
because he's a pilot, but
Yeah.
he's being touted as just a contractor. And, you know, so, you know, it's like you're a fence builder, but one of the things that you're very passionate about is transportation.
Right. And
And tell us why.
I mean, so growing up around here in this very neighborhood, right? there's none of it to be had. I remember when I was a little kid, I remember the bus system starting, and I remember my dad always being interested in local news. He's like, this is a big deal, it's going to help so many people. And
The Suntran.
yeah, and that was in 1998, and when they made that change and they rolled that out, you know, you saw all this explosion of the stops and everything like that, and there was that initial excitement, but at the same time, it's kind of really only changed so much. It's changed more recently than it probably had in the last, you know, 23 years since its inception, but at the same time, it recently got handed back to the city, so fresh eyes and fresh hands on it. Now, with that being said, you know, we have 22 boards and commissions in the city. That ranges from important things like, you know, firefighter and police pension boards and the airport, all those sort of things, down to the golf courses and trees and how you handle tree policy in the city. So the fact that we have as robust a system as the public transportation that's solely back in the city's hands administratively, I mean, they got city tags on those buses, but we got a manager, I think his name is Steve Neal, and he reports back to council, obviously, but other than that, where's their citizen interaction? Where is their employee interaction other than when they decide to hold forums to get these feedback? And I think they did one of those in April or May, something like that this year, and I don't know how well attended it was. I was too busy and I wanted to go, but you know, I grew up fiscally challenged, and my mom was a single mother, so if I wanted to get somewhere, it was pretty much tagging along with other groups, hanging out with my aunt who used to live right down the road, and other than that, going on a bike, right? And that's how I ended up going to college, and everything else was literally pedaling that bike all the way from these sort of areas out there. And it's not just people like me, you know, you got some pretty rough neighborhoods in this area where there's people who are definitely low income, and you're talking about hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of units of housing, but do they necessarily say anything about it? No, but at the same time, anytime in situations like that, you go to a low income area, are they making their, you know, their issues known? That's up to us to kind of recognize it and see what we can do to help. And I think you agree, and you know exactly what I'm talking about. And some of these places just, man, you put a bus out there, some of these people are going to get to work easier. A lot of the kids are going to get to parks easier and things like that. And look, I don't know about you, but as a parent, you know, idle hands find trouble. So if these kids can get out about all day long, they're going to get back here and go to sleep. All these cars ain't going to be getting broken into all night long. You're not going to see fights after school all day in these backyards right when Maplewood lets out. And that's just how it is, right? You got lower 441, this sort of area. It goes, we got the bus system out in the shores. That's been there for a long time. But overall, we haven't seen that sort of change. And it's really a simple 3-step thing that you can do. You can actually get a transportation, you know, board or commission set up, whatever you want to name it, and give it whatever fancy sounding name you want. Make it 11 people. You got, you know, 5 pass holders who sit on the board, 3 employees and 3 citizens at large. 11 people to actually meet just every couple of months, every quarter, give feedback, say what's working, say what's not, and do those things. I mean, I served on OMAC and we were just giving away grant money left and right, and that's all we did. We sat down.
What is OMAC?
Municipal Arts Commission for Ocala, right? And all we did was sit there and do art funding, essentially. We just looked at how much grant money we had from selling tags at the DMV and reviewed people's applications to get $500 for statues or 3D printers and all these different things. If we can task some city staff and get some volunteers to sit down in that capacity every couple of months, I don't see why you don't have people interested in a bus system. End of the day, overall it costs us about $3 million.
A year?
Yep, per annum. 500,000 or so, I think those are rough figures, right? It's 209.944 or something, but $3 million more or less. About $500,000 a year comes back from the fares. I mean, that's a joke at that point. If we know that it operates at a deficit, but that we recognize it's something that's worth our time and worth investing in our community, some things are like that. You don't get charged $1 every time you call 911. Don't get on the ambulance, you're going to get a lot more than $1, but just to make the call, it's not going to be $1 to do it, right? So just to get on a bus, $1.50, when we know we want these people
That's what
moving
it's
around.
cost. So basically the Suntran is $1.50 and you can ride it anywhere.
I think it's, yeah, if you pay that $1.50, I think you're kind of good for the day.
And that does go all the way out to the shores.
Right. And what it does is it loops out into the shores.
So $1.50 for the entire day.
Yeah, and then you can kind of keep hopping, but usually people are probably typically spending that $1.50 and
Each
kind of,
time,
you know,
and
or
going.
just they're doing their one trip and
Yeah.
done for the day.
Right.
But there are pass holders. You can buy them at a few different, I think they're monthly passes.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why we don't do something more robust there.
We don't have monthly passes?
We do, but I don't see why we don't have like an annual pass
Sure.
and things like that.
Or even an incentive program for people to buy passes, because what you're saying about the young people, which actually sparked my interest, because we don't market that, And you're right. The kids can go. The kids can go to the pools, to the different parks, to the recreation
I think
centers.
most people in Ocala, they think of the bus and they think of that thing that's stopping them in the middle of the road.
Yeah.
That's what they
Well,
think.
and I mean, I obviously have no need for the bus, thank the Lord. But where does it go? Where
Yeah,
where
no, exactly.
they don't market any of that.
Yeah,
and you would
exactly.
think with a program like Suntran, it would be more marketing. I'm sitting here thinking, have I not paid attention, or is it just not being marketed?
It's not being marketed. It's not being, and I think some of that is probably due to something that we're both pretty familiar with, right? And that's what it looks like when you have some county hands and some city hands and some third-party hands all involved. So it used to be Marion TPO. So then you had conversations between the city and the county, and then you had them themselves, the TPO, and it's third-party contracted out to RevTech or whatever it's called, some third-party company that we pay a contract to officially running.
So is it city and county run still?
No, it's all city
run
now.
by the city.
Yep, it's all,
which started out that way.
Right.
So the city actually would be charged with marketing it to make it more more profitable. I mean,
more
anything
profitable,
you
run it like a
advertise,
business.
certainly.
And at the end of the day, look, what's $1.50 per fare doing compared to the fact that it's just a blue bus with no advertisement on it? When I was in Tallahassee, when I was at Florida State, you had Morgan & Morgan on the side of buses. You had every attorney under the sun, just like billboards and anything else. How much revenue can that bring back into the system? Per route, per bus. I don't know if that's some sort of weird technicality where because we do this as a third-party contract, we're not doing it, or if we just turned a blind eye on it and said, we're not doing it. But another thing that we need to look at is covered stops, because in the end of the day, how fiscally responsible is it to push these buses around every hour and 10 minutes? And in the rain, hail, sleet, or snow, do you really expect there to be as many people out there? No.
There are no covered bus stops.
Right, and Jay Mosley pointed out to me at one forum, he's like, we've tried doing it, and a lot of it's right-of-way issues. Okay, I get that, especially in downtown Ocala,
Sure.
and expecting what are you going to cut it inside the building, right? But I'm sure there's still also opportunities when you look at that to not just say, well, there's a right-of-way issue and it ends there. Maybe there's some way to do,
there's plenty of city property downtown that could access a small area.
And you
for
could
a
aggregate
covered bus
things.
route. And it
There's
doesn't have to be
always
large,
ways.
you know.
Right.
But that's a great idea. Well, so that's actually a very admirable thing that you could bring forward. We've talked about with different political people on this show that as one person, it's very hard to bring something forward that all four of your peers will agree on. So you have to sell it, and you have to have the research and the knowledge behind it, but you make a very compelling argument. I would probably vote for it if I was with you.
The good thing that I think is I've bounced it off everybody, right? Through time, it's kind of come up because I'm passionate about it. It matters. And usually I think I see agreement. I think everybody kind of universally agrees that I've heard it's a no-brainer. Of course we would. Why not? And I think it just comes down to
Pushing it.
Nobody's pushed it. Maybe the people who work within the department, Stephen Neal probably has pushed a lot of this stuff. But at the end of the day, you got how many department heads that are all making demands on the budget. All of them are pointing out their needs. Council sits down and meets for how many hours every couple of weeks. It kind of gets lost in translation.
Sure.
But if you actually get that board set up and you make it something that is known and someone is out here just beating it home, it's got to have an advocate.
Mm-hmm.
Who's been advocating for it?
Mm-hmm.
Nobody. So at the end of the day, if nothing else, I think I've planted the seeds to change in that way. I think no matter what happens, people know and they're open-minded.
I agree. I give you kudos for that. That is, I have not had this conversation with you. I had heard you speak briefly of it in forums, but until you just shared that with me, I mean, you're 100% correct. I agree. Yep. So that's very good. What other issues are you passionate about, or does that seem to be the big one that you're pushing?
City parks are important, right? And that comes down to a number of things. I could always see anything that's certain amenities need to be covered, right? Like basketball court's been out in Trivigant how many years? Why doesn't that one get it covered, right? I mean, the YMCA just did it privately on their facility. Everybody's going to sit back and stare at that. What are they going to want to do? They're going to want to get past that chain link fence and go in there and play basketball there. And you're going to get all these calls all the time. Hey, they're over here over this fence playing ball in these courts again. Just cover the thing. It doesn't cost that much for a metal pavilion over it. And everybody looks at me and they say, hey, this costs money, this costs money. Bus stuff is a different recurring thing that, like we talked about, can be made totally different. Something like that, one flat cost, and we actually get a lot more use out of something that we know is there for a reason. I mean, how many times have we repainted it? A lot of that has to do with rain and sun. If we have to sit there and resurface that court, how many times when does your return on investment over some putting a metal overhang over it become cheaper in the long haul? And when is it better for our society? That's what we have to look at.
Sure, and there's plenty of money wasted. I mean, that's probably not a huge expense. So
I mean, there's
that's
nobody.
a valid point.
There's nobody that's against first responders.
Of course,
Everybody's pro first responder. Everybody wants us to have what we need. Everybody wants to do managed growth. But good news, what are you going to do? You're either going to approve good permitting or you're going to deny it, and it's going to have to be by merit of what it is. You can't look at 7-Eleven and tell them that you feel like it's not good for the city of Ocala just because we have too many gas stations. If you actually write that down, it's going to be laughed off, and they're going to get an attorney and come back to you, right? So it's we can't just shut it down.
I applaud you for the mindset of everybody supports first responders. That's a given, and I always say that should never be used as a campaign platform.
It's not strong talking point.
Unless you want to come out and say I don't support first responders, then it could be a campaign platform.
Right.
But it should be a given. We all need our fire services. We all need our police protection. We want that. We expect that.
And honestly, even this
so
idea
any politician should support that overwhelmingly.
And another thing that's funny is I hear all these people talk about like common sense and accountability, transparency. We really anticipate you to come with common sense. If you're not coming with common sense, just leave the conversation.
You can't take that as a given.
And I know that,
a lot of politicians with no common sense.
But if they say it out loud, what does it mean? You know what I mean? It's one of those things that if you got to remind somebody 100 times, you're the boss.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Are you the boss?
But we've had have had people get elected who run on a common sense platform that have zero common sense when it comes down to certain things.
Oh, and then people make it sound like, they say they're going to be accountable and transparent, Again, you're not going to hear me beat that drum too many times because we're all going to swear an oath to do that. We're all beholden by state statutes from 104, 106 and on, sunshine laws. You got no choice but to be transparent. And if found not, it doesn't matter if that was your campaign promise or not. You're going to get hammered and people aren't going to like it. They're not going to remember that you promised you would be during your campaign trail.
Right.
It's implied that you should be. You're trying to get into public service. Anything like that. It's just beyond me. Show that you have common sense.
Yeah.
Come to us and show us that you have common sense by having something real of substance
clever.
to talk about. Yeah.
Having something of substance. That's a great way to put it. That is
have an original thought of your own. Don't just be a parrot for
something forward and show us that you're actually going to do something rather than ride on the coattails and get elected because you want the insurance package and or the power. And I have an issue with that, and I've said that a million times on this show. So I'm beating the dead horse. But well, very good. See, I appreciate conversations like this. I don't know if we have any viewers that also appreciate it, but I can't make any promises.
I'm sorry I didn't harp on the same talking points, everybody.
But no, very good. And I know that you are very community active, not just in the city of Ocala. You tell us what you do for.
I mean, I've done things from all over North Central Florida with theater groups, especially. I work with y'all on Christmas parade, although I think you've been emailing stuff to the wrong email again because I've heard about it.
I haven't done anything. I'm glad you brought that up. Not that anybody cares, but the school system just voted to move forward with allowing students to participate in the Christmas parade.
There you go.
Yes, thank
So
God. So applications are online at ocalachristmasparade.org, and that they will run through October 30th, and then we'll have a meeting. So
don't miss the safety meetings.
That's exactly right.
Need you there.
That's true. But
so,
yes, you're on the Christmas parade committee. You've been very active with B&I groups for many, many years.
Yeah.
You also were a Marion County public school teacher, correct?
Yeah. I worked at Fort King for a year. That was the funnest year of my life. I came in midstream. It was right before Heidi Meyer got elected, which, don't get me wrong, she's a great superintendent. But the way my situation worked was her policy was to keep teachers in front of students with more instructional time, which is a great idea. Until it's like me, the one, and then like 5 other people who had just got hired that weren't education backgrounds. So they canceled all the continuing education by day. And we're like, valuable time in front of the kids. We got to make it more valuable by knowing what we're doing, right? And you probably remember what it's like the first time you're getting in front of those students.
Oh, yeah.
And, I thought it was Freedom Riders, and I'm over here being all their friend.
Can't do that.
Yeah, no, I'm so ready for it.
Fort King Middle is a tough school too. That's funny. I think you were there at the same time my dad was a lunch lady at Fort King Middle. He he retired. Actually, he was a contractor, and then he worked for the county as a building inspector, and then retired. And my mom passed away, and he thought he needed something to do, so I got him a job as a school lunch lady.
Hey, get it how you live. Sometimes that's
He
what it
actually
takes.
loved it. It was right, up until he passed.
Sometimes that's
he
what it
enjoyed
takes.
it.
But Fort King was a
Fort King was a tough school.
nightmare.
It
And
is
I
a
had,
tough school.
listen, I taught 6th grade intensive reading, 8th grade intensive reading, and 8th grade U.S. history. Okay, no 2 of them are back to back. So every single time I had 3 minutes to change everything out on that board. And I was a first year teacher who started in the middle of the year. I was these kids' 3rd teacher. They had had nothing but a long-term sub, and I wasn't ready at first to bring the sort of structure that it took to even change that situation around, right? And I remember writing my principal an email, like, I'm done at the end of this day. This ain't no 2 weeks. You get 6-hour notice, my friend. Goodbye. Send. At lunchtime, I read his response, and he said, okay, let me know when you change your mind. It wasn't if, it was when. I'm like, darn, Mr. Smallridge, how did you know?
Gary Smallridge, one of my favorite
Yeah,
people.
yeah, Gary, not his brother, but he didn't even say if. He said, let me know when you change your mind. So I'm like, this guy's really been doing this a long time, and he knows that, like, this is just a moment that you're having because it's the first time I complained at all. And it was like, but you know how it goes, right?
It's a tough job, and my hat's off to you for that.
Yeah.
And you and I think, have had this conversation before when you were thinking about going back a few years ago, and there's nothing better for students than having a male influence, especially in so many single-parent homes where there may not be a male.
And
dominant.
with that demographic at that school in particular, and look,
Yes.
I don't care. You can crucify me. I know people hear this. I don't care. People tell you you don't treat the school different because of the demographics. It's like, no, what you mean to say is you don't treat them with less respect. But if you think that you can treat students from like 8th Street Elementary School and Osceola Middle School, it was a culture shock for me.
Sure, it's two
I went to
worlds.
the A schools and with all the kids who come from upper income brackets, and
I used to say that all the time when I was on the school board. People don't understand how vastly different the dynamic is
Different world.
in
Wholly
different
different ballgame.
quadrants of just our county. So yeah.
even just the disciplinary structure, right?
Yeah.
What you can expect
That's-
there. The academic structure isn't that different. You've got still kids who are very, very talented, and because of that lack of recognition, and let's just cookie cutter treat everything the same. That's why that lack of rigid discipline is what leads to what you see as everything falling apart. You've got to have these systems in place. You've got to be prepared to say, you're going to this school, we're sending you in there tough. We're not. Come on, man.
Well,
Send your rookies in
that,
14
I ran on very strong discipline, and I changed the school code of conduct to be much more structured and stronger than it is right now. And a year or two ago, Heidi appointed me back to the code of conduct as just a community representative, and it had gotten so weak, and I had to leave. I was like, listen, there's y'all are not going to like anything I have to say. This whole damn thing needs to be thrown away.
And I've had so many people ask me, why'd you do city stuff instead of the school board? Really, just mostly at one issue. The bus issue is something that right from the jump I was like, hey, I've thought about it for so long. I'm like, I know how to make something happen for once. So that was what motivated it, and I'll say it till I'm blue in the face. And hey, I'm looking at it as win or learn, right? And I've learned a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you this much: I learned more about my pet issue. I've learned more about other issues, and you'd have to have gone in here blindfolded and with stuff stuffed in your ears if you didn't come away learning from all these conversations that we've all had together.
That's it, yeah.
You know?
Lori Gregory said the same thing yesterday about how much she's learned, and even if whoever prevails, if even those who don't, you're young enough where you have a good stepping stone to, maybe you could run for school board next time, or run for something else. Who knows what your calling truly is, or maybe you'll serve on council for 15, 18 years. Who knows?
Really, I've sat back and I've looked at it, and the way I see it is, if I lose here, what'll happen with me probably is I'm gonna take a few months to regroup, and I might even just go into the Army for a while.
Really?
Because with everything that's been going on, my family has always served for a really long time. My dad was in the Army. His dad was in the Army in Korea. His brother died in the Navy. My mom's dad was in the Army. My great-grandfather was in Europe in World War I. So all the way back to the Revolution. Like, you literally got John Everts, Sr. in the Revolution, Captain Nathaniel Everts, who is in French and Indian War. So it's kind of one of those things. It's like a Lieutenant Dan story. I just want to keep my legs. As long as I keep my legs, I'm just not going to go in the Army. I'm just going to do like Air Force or Navy or something. And I've got my degree. I can go into OCS, and if you haven't looked at those federal pay scales lately, like, yeah, 10 years in isn't looking that bad. So at that point, if I decide to do politics when I come back, I'll be that much better equipped, that much better funded, because I won't be a broke fence guy, and we'll see what happens. But at the same time, going back to that last little bit before we wrap up, the return of investment that some people expect to see out of what they've spent on these elections, I don't think it's there.
Sheila and I have talked about it multiple times on the show about the money, the insanity behind the money that's being spent on these races.
I've seen people win on a few $100 in these city races in the past.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I've talked about people who run grounds campaigns like yourself that didn't have a lot of money. They're out there.
That's typically what it is.
It's actually the way it should be. These big money races. Sheila had all the flyers, the thousands and thousands of dollars worth of flyers that probably get very little attention on the way to the garbage can. And it's just, this will be a very interesting election. I collect data from elections and Facebook and who ran their campaign and how. And this one, there were so many different versions of campaigning. It was. You're right.
And
you're right.
I just don't want to see it turn into another monster. I don't want to turn it into another one of these big pack games. I don't want to keep seeing tens and tens of thousands of dollars spent because, like you said, it's really not what it should be. You should always have a certain layer of professional funding that's there that any serious candidate has to afford mailers, maybe a billboard if you feel you need it. You shouldn't need a billboard in the city of Ocala. It should be a round or two of mailers, a few yard signs, some bumper stickers.
Well, the city of Ocala used to be strictly based off of grounds campaigns and door knocking.
Yeah,
and it's evolved like anything else. It's evolved, but it will be interesting to see because it used to be the mindset of he with the most money wins, and I don't think we're going to see that in this election.
I think the nature of it was that was what happened in the mayoral race, and a lot of cards kept falling, and people kept running certain campaigns. And Greg Steen, he was just out there from 2 years ago on. He was just beating the campaign trail hard. I gave him this. He was dedicated. He did what it took.
He didn't stop.
He's learned his victory dance, and I hope to film it for him. This is going to be amusing for me. I keep telling everybody.
I've said it over and over, and I know this sounds, I don't know, weak or stupid, or I don't know how it sounds, but we're going to be very well served, regardless of how things turn out. There are a lot of very credible, viable, good people running. And I say that about incumbents as well. And so, we're really in a win-win situation. Unfortunately, I think there were a lot of factors right before qualifying that changed the dichotomy of this election, including Manalfa getting in the race at the 11th hour. So we'll see what happens. It's here we are, 3 days, 72 hours from the end, the possible end. One of y'all's going on in November, or two of y'all.
Two of us, and possibly the same thing in District 3, which I can only, I just hope and pray for everybody that's or for the two that make it into runoff, whether it's me or not. I hope that they're not the only one. I honestly hope that District 3 goes to runoff too.
Yeah, you're right. That will be sad.
The way I see it is this. I feel like you're just going to get a lot of lingering emotions from what happened in the mayoral race, and a lot of that spotlight is just going to shine on a single runoff.
Predominantly what usually happens in a situation where it goes to runoff is there's a little lull for about 2 to 3 weeks.
I don't know if that would happen now.
Well, that's what I was going to say. And then it fires up. But depending on what you're talking about, the outcome of the mayor's race could cause a little citywide tension.
It could. And that's only the one way. But even just depending on who goes to our runoff, look, some of those people are more friendly with one candidate than another. And if they're there, they might just get a lot of that spotlight and a lot of lasers aimed at them. And look.
Well, let's hope everybody acts civil and it doesn't go to a bad direction. Ocala's not really groomed for that kind of behavior, so we're pretty blessed, and of course our police department keeps everything in tight order. So
it's been pretty good. I haven't heard of too much.
Y'all have been civil. I mean, there's been negative mailers, but there hasn't really been any fighting and stuff like that. Nothing too crazy. But,
I appreciate you having me.
Well, no, I appreciate you. I have to get up, because of my rinky-dink deal I got going on right now.
You'll be able to figure out how to chop and edit.
Well, I'm gonna let you give your last pitch, and then we'll close out the show. So you tell everybody why they should vote for you.
if you want to vote for somebody who actually cares about the city, who cares about the city's people enough to move them around on buses, who cares enough to be attentive to the issues and try to tune in one-to-one every chance we get, and who's willing to keep acting like every day is an opportunity to learn and grow, vote for me September 21st. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex Everts, City Council candidate District 4, and thank you everybody for hanging in there with us.